1 minute. There, good? Oh, okay, we're good. All right, good afternoon, everyone. I will, right now, oh, we've got sound, thank you. So this is the Clackamas County Budget Committee, Tuesday, May 27, 2025. I'll call to order the meeting and the Clackamas County Budget Committee meeting. I would ask the members of our Budget Committee to introduce themselves, and we'll start all the way over with our brand-new Commissioner, Diana Helm. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Diana Helm, Commissioner.
Wendy Rader, citizen member.
Paul Savas, Commissioner.
James Rhodes, citizen member.
Ben West, Commissioner.
James Karn, citizen member.
And Craig Roberts.
Jan Lee, citizen member.
Martha Schrader.
Kenny Cernak, citizen member.
All right, I will open the floor for nominations for chair.
I nominate Ken Cernak for chair.
I'll second.
All right. And there's been a nomination for Ken Cernak. Is there any other further nominations?
I would like to nominate James Karn.
Okay. James Karn. All right, we have two nominations, and Jamie Karn and Ken Cernak. And is there a second on Jamie Karn?
Second.
And second, all right. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, nominations are closed. Clerk, would you please call the poll?
Well, Chair, just point of order. Can we first maybe ask both Mr. Carnes and Mr. Cernak if they want to be the chair?
Good suggestion.
And then we might need a motion to pick one or the other.
Yeah.
Well, I'll make a statement. Having served last year as the chair, I enjoyed that. I thought it was fun, but I have no problem in yielding to Mr. Cernak in this position. Maybe it broadens our scope as a budget committee to have more people involved. Either way, I am fine, either doing or not doing. Either way.
Commissioner West, I see you.
I also think either one would be completely fine. So I know that there had been some conversations about how this might go out. So I just was giving options, but I think either one would be fantastic.
Thank you.
Mr. Cernak, are you willing to serve?
I'm willing, yes.
Well, in that case, I'd like to yield. And if he would really like to do it, and I had a chance to do it last year, then I would yield and withdraw my name so Kenny can serve.
All right. Well, thank you, Jamie. And with that, if there's any other comments, I guess I need a motion then still, right?
I move to elect Kenny Cernak as the chair.
Second.
All right. It's been a motion by Commissioner Savas to nominate Ken Cernak as the chair, seconded by Commissioner West. Any other comments? Seeing none, clerk, would you please call the poll?
Mr. Rhodes.
Aye.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Mr. Karn.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Commissioner Helm.
Aye.
Ms. Rader.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Ms. Lee.
Aye.
Mr. Cernak.
Aye.
Chair Roberts.
Aye.
Motion passes 10-0, Mr. Chair.
All right. The
So
vote's
would
10.
Mr. Karn and Mr. Cernak please switch seats?
Yes.
Don't forget your wonderful.
Now we're in a cakewalk.
Oh, I feel less safe. Police and fire on either side, and yeah. But I do feel smarter on this side. It's still safe on this side.
We got you.
So just to clarify, the vote's 10-0. Mr. Cernak is elected chair, and at this time, it's an honor to turn it over to you to chair the meeting.
Oh, I This is yours. You will be.
No, I have.
Oh, you got it? Yeah. Okay, just making sure. Sandra did a great job with giving us everything you need, making sure.
All right, so I'll open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
I would like to nominate James Carnes.
Second.
Second.
We're all gonna race.
I move the nominations be closed.
All right. Any objections? Then, since James Carn's been nominated, I'll call the poll.
Mr. Rhodes.
Aye.
Mr. West.
Aye.
Mr. Karn.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Commissioner Helm.
Aye.
Ms. Radar.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Ms. Lee.
Aye.
Chair Roberts.
Aye.
Chair Cernak.
Aye.
Motion passes 10-0, Mr. Chair.
Great. I'd like to now ask Gary Schmidt to begin the presentation.
We still have a more nominations, Chair, on
Oh, I'm
page
sorry.
2, double-sided.
You need, is it this one?
There's a back. Thank you. So I'd like to open nominations for secretary.
I nominate Wendy Rader.
Second.
Any other nominations? All right, then, hearing none, nominations are closed. Clerk, would you please call the poll?
Ms. Lee.
Oh, aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Ms. Rader.
Aye.
Commissioner Helm.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Mr. Karn.
Aye.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Mr. Rhodes.
Aye.
Chair Cernak.
Aye.
Chair Roberts.
Aye.
Motion passes 10-0, Mr. Chair.
Excellent. The vote's 10-0. Wendy is elected secretary. Every 2 years, we also appoint one of our citizen members to the audit committee. Wendy Rader is the current appointee, and her term is from fiscal year 24-25 through 25-26. Since the current term runs through the proposed fiscal year, Wendy Rader will continue the budget committee, being the public member on the audit committee for the current period. No appointment vote is necessary for the audit committee. First order of business is approval of the February 25th minutes. Minutes have previously been distributed. Any corrections? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the committee approve the February 25th minutes, Budget Committee minutes as distributed. Any further discussion? Hearing none, clerk, would you please call the poll?
Mr. Rhodes.
Aye.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Mr. Karn.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Commissioner Helm.
Aye.
Ms. Rader.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Ms. Lee.
Aye.
Chair Roberts.
Aye.
Chair Cernak.
Aye.
Motion passes 10-0, Mr. Chair.
Votes 10-0, motion passes. I'll now ask Gary Schmidt, County Administrator, to present the budget message.
Thank you, members of the Budget Committee. The proposed budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 for general Clackamas County operations is $1,510,118,895, including the 8 county service districts, of which the Board of County Commissioners is the governing body. The total Clackamas County proposed budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 is $2,026,238,665. Last year, I said that was the highest budget ever for Clackamas County government. That is not the case anymore. This is $73 million less than the current fiscal year because many of the one-time sources of federal funds have ended. and many more are going to be ending this year. This proposed budget is balanced as required by Oregon state law. In late 2024, the Board of County Commissioners approved a policy creating 3 definitions for a budget, and they direct me to make sure those definitions are met in the budget. They are: balanced means that planned revenues match or exceed expenses each budget year. That is accurate for this proposed budget. Next, structurally sound means ongoing programs are funded with ongoing revenues and restricts the allocation of one-time revenues to one-time expenditures. That is accurate for this proposed budget. Finally, sustainable means a budget that manages finances for short and long-term financial health. This proposed budget does half of that. Foreshadowing, wait till my message, I'll tell you more. All right, in general, our most valuable resource at Clackamas County are our employees, over 2,500 county employees that work every day to serve the public and implement your policy direction, Board of Commissioners. Employees are also our most expensive source of revenue, of expenses within the county government. Cost of living increases, PERS rates continues to grow and grow and grow. As well, the uncertainty of federal funding continues to be a great concern. We have not been cut federally yet, but there are signals that it will occur. Both the funds we receive directly from the federal government and federal dollars that are passed through the state that then come to the county. Up to this point, the Board of Commissioners has a policy of no backfilling using general funds when state or federal dollars end. Because of the county's commitment to fund the replacement county courthouse for the next 30 years, there is no cushion. There's no cushion of general funds sitting in a pot that we can spend. So I give a fair warning. When federal dollars end, those programs and services funded by federal dollars will also end. This will have a dramatic impact to the public because many, many services, primarily in health, housing, and human services, are funded federally, unless the board directs me otherwise. So please keep that in mind as you consider this budget. 2 fiscal years ago, the general fund expenditures at Clackamas County was reduced by approximately $15 million a year to pay for the annual payment for the replacement county courthouse. It's an approximate $15 million payment a year for 30 years. Again, there's no debt. Clackamas County took out no debt for this courthouse, but instead, every year for 30 years, the county will be paying approximately $15 million a year. It grows slightly over those years. Earlier this month, Clackamas County paid a milestone payment of $130 million to the contractor that built the courthouse. This was entirely paid from the state of Oregon. Thank you to the state of Oregon and our partners, entirely paid by the state of Oregon. The wire transfer worked, the money moved, everything worked out perfectly. Cost allocation changes. There were no changes to the cost allocation model this year, but as you recall, the cost allocation model was dramatically revised 3 fiscal years ago, to the great concern of almost every department because of the increase of how allocated costs changed during that fiscal year. This was done to reflect a 30-year-old model that had not been updated in almost 30 years, and we were no longer meeting federal requirements. We had to do it. And the reason we did it was to reduce the draw on the general fund to fund internal and central services. This year, I capped cost allocations at no more than a 4% increase. Departments are very pleased by that, and I hope you'll ask them because they told me that anyway. But if you choose to change the cost allocation model, I'm not asking you to, it just means the general fund will then have to pay for those expenses, which there's no room in the general fund to do that. If you've read my budget message, I hope you have, I am proposing a one-time only cost of $1.2 million of general funds for one-time critical technology infrastructure needs for our assessor's office and our human resources office. Our data systems are, again, 25 years old. They're no longer being supported by the vendor. We have to make a change to do the day-to-day business of Clackamas County, as well as a new system for the assessor's office, where that system is also out of date and must be replaced. So one time only, $1.2 million of general funds have been invested in those 2 areas. As you know, I hope you know, we are the only local government in the Portland region that is not facing dramatic budget cuts this fiscal year. That is due to the leadership of this budget committee the last 5 years, really, our Board of County Commissioners and our incredible staff. However, we have been making steady cuts each year for the last 6 fiscal years. The reason we don't have dramatic cuts is you've already been doing it over the last 6 fiscal years. I'd like to draw your attention, please, to page 10 of my budget message, and it will be shown online here, please, Andrew. Even with the proposed budget I offer to you today, there are still some critical unmet needs in departments, and I simply could not, in good conscience, find ways to make it work in the budget. But I want to draw your attention for your consideration, and all these directors and elected officials will tell them to you when they present to you tomorrow. And I'm not going to read the whole list, but you can see here, there's some serious ones. Disaster management desperately needs support in its medical examiner's office to support those people who rely on that function. Health, Housing, and Human Services desperately needs support to support our veteran population. Our Veteran Service Office is in dire need of additional support. More support to help administration of Medicaid claims, to help people navigate our Women, Infant, and Children's program, more support for the county health needs assessment. Our district attorney's office is in desperate need of support for the victim assistance program. And I want to call this out. Our district attorney is the only elected official or department director or Board of County Commissioner that does not have any administrative support. He does his own calendar, very poorly, by the way. He needs support, and he finally asked for it, and I said, no, I'm sorry. And our Transportation of Development, Department of Transportation and Development, our dog services staff desperately need support or are having to close down the shelter, not able to work every day. Code enforcement is not able to meet the demands and really needs additional support there, as well as some new changes in code enforcement that's going to have an impact on our staff. So there are serious needs, members of the Budget Committee, that are not in the budget. And if you were to, in your generous heart, decide and tell me, well, let's find funding for $1.6 million, Gary, I will ask you, great, where would you like to take it from? Finally, I do want to note, out of all great respect to the sheriff, I am proposing an addition of $6.8 million of general funds to the sheriff's office and the Enhanced Law Enforcement District. Commissioners, you just heard that earlier today, for both completing this current fiscal year and for the next fiscal year. The sheriff was adamant that these funds are necessary to simply have a status quo budget. I do have concerns with that request. However, out of respect for the sheriff, as an elected official, it's up to her to make her case to you. So I did put it in the proposed budget, but I have to tell you, this does put the ability for the county to pay the courthouse annual payments for 30 years in jeopardy, and it puts us in jeopardy in year 11. 11 years from now, the county will no longer be able to make that $15 million payment for the courthouse. So it puts us in the red 11 fiscal years from now. Now, you may think, well, that's a long time from now, and probably all of us will be retired or no longer here. So we could punt this for a year or two and let future budget committees and boards decide how to get us back in the black after 11 years, or the magic number is 6.8 million, that you would reduce the general fund budget and this proposed budget by $6.8 million. And if you were to do that, the question is, where do you take it from? I don't think it's fair to take it all from the sheriff. You could, or you will direct me to take it across the board from all departments. So I'm sorry, Budget Committee, I don't have an easy bow on the budget for you this year. But then you always ask me, why don't we get a chance to deliberate more, Gary, and really get our hands in the budget? Well, this year you get that opportunity on this Thursday. All right. The general fund in general, page 7 of the packet, please, Andrew. The general fund budget, I know that's only a small portion of the budget, but that's really your discretionary funds. You get entirely to decide how to spend that money. For this proposed budget, the general fund is approximately $183 million. This is an increase from last fiscal year, and it is the annual property tax revenues that the county receives, plus the $15 million for the annual courthouse payment that's been saved on hold, so to speak, that moves forward, and the additional general funds that I'm proposing for the sheriff's office. The general fund commitment to public safety is huge. For the sheriff's office, $86.5 million. The district attorney's office, $15.7 million. For the juvenile department, $8.9 million. I consider disaster management part of public safety, $3.5 million, all general fund. All added together, that is 73% of the county's general fund is dedicated to public safety. I know the Budget Committee and the Board of Commissioners absolutely supports public safety, both law and order. I don't know how else you can demonstrate your commitment to public safety unless you give 100% of the general fund to public safety, in which case you see exactly on that chart who gets general funds. You would eliminate those general funds to those other services you care deeply about, like housing, health, human services, transportation, and development are the next highest users of the general fund. Our general fund contingency is at the required 5% policy direction of $23.8 million. Again, contingencies are meant for one-time only expenses that occur during the fiscal year that were not planned for. Our general fund reserves is at the required 10% policy requirement at $22.2 million. And as you know, a reserve is for future expenditures. You cannot use it in the current year, but plan it for future years. I do advise you on contingency in particular. Please save that for when the really catastrophic, unplanned event occurs, which to me is a natural disaster. The earthquake, Mount Hood exploding, volcano. I'm being somewhat facetious, but if those were to happen, we'd decimate county government. In my opinion, that's what you save those dollars for. Our proposed full-time employee count is at 2,513 employees, which is approximately 63 employees higher than the current fiscal year, and those are to two departments only, Health, Housing, and Human Services, and the Sheriff's Office. The Health, Housing, Human Services was due to federal or state grants that help fund those additional positions. Again, we could lose those federal dollars, but for now, they're dollars in hand. And for the Sheriff's Office, those are general funded positions for the replacement county courthouse. My authorities to offer you this budget is Oregon Revised Statute 294.331 and County Code 209.060, which designates me as a budget officer for all county departments, including all offices led by elected officials and special districts. I'm almost done, and I'll take your questions then. I want to thank our staff who've worked diligently on this proposed budget for really a year. After you approved last year's, we got started on this year's proposed. In particular, Elizabeth Comfort, Finance Director, Sandra Montoya, Budget Manager, Cindy Becker, Project Coordinator in the Office of the County Administrator, and the finance staff, Blaze Riggins, John Zhang, Roxanne Fisher, and Megan Peterson. Budget Committee, here's your direction, your request moving forward. You have received a proposed budget. It is now up to you to accept, reject, or modify this proposed budget. A reminder of your authorities. All committee members have one vote and equal authority. A quorum of this committee is 6 members. You need 6 members present to conduct business, and it takes 6 of you to make any changes via a motion, even if 10 members are not present. So you must have at least 6 to conduct business. If only 6 of you are here, all 6 of you must agree to a motion to make a change. Budget Committee members, you are prohibited from discussing or deliberating on the budget outside of the Budget Committee meetings. And as I mentioned, if you do make any changes to the proposed general fund budget, I will need you to direct me where else you'd like to make reductions to accommodate those changes that you make. For our process, I will answer your questions here shortly, and then Elizabeth Comfort, Sandra Montoya, and Cindy Becker will give you a further update on the general fund in particular for the county, the forecast. Tomorrow, you will hear from each department director and elected official who leads an office. We're going back to how we used to do it. They will each present their department or office budget. I've instructed them to be concise and brief, but then they'll take as long as they need to answer your questions. We must do all of that between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. tomorrow. You must finish by 5 p.m., Chair Cernak. I'll help you. But if anything goes over, we'll have to accommodate so we get it all done by 5 p.m. tomorrow. Tomorrow, you'll have public comment at 6 p.m. in this room for the public to comment on your budget. And then this Thursday, you will deliberate on the budget, and you will stay until you're done, however long or short that may take. And then hopefully you'll finish your work on Thursday. If not, we'll meet on Friday as well. So that's a lot to share with you. I thank you for all that you do. I'm here with you all week to help you through this process. But at this point, I will pause and ask if you have any questions on the proposed budget, anything I've said, anything in the written materials, or anything at all you'd like to ask me. Back to you, Chair.
All right, committee members, any questions? Paul?
Yeah, committee members, if I get a little emotional, I'm sorry, but bear with me. Commissioner Helm, welcome. You weren't here in February. I believe it was February we last saw the 30-year forecast. And I just sat down here and for the first time and now looking at a 30-year forecast. And Gary, you alluded to some changes that I thought we had a policy. Maybe we didn't. Maybe it needs to be an ordinance, but I thought we had a policy. We left here in February, actually last year, last calendar year, with the purpose of having a 30-year forecast to make sure we can make these payments of the courthouse for a 30-year period. So how or why or how do we prevent a department from blowing the budget when it's our budget? I'm lost. If it's the 6.8 you spoke to earlier, how are we going to have the fiscal discipline? I'm not going to be here 30 years from now or 20 years from now on this, or 15 or 10. This isn't going to work. And this, I feel like a little bit betrayed. If you want to know the truth, I feel a little bit, and again, members, this is Paul speaking. I feel a little bit betrayed because I thought we had this 30-year forecast. We talked about it in February. In February, this line here, the low right corner, was about $3 million positive. Now it's $249 million negative. We can't do that. I reviewed the budget. Granted, I didn't cover every page in the book because I spent a lot of time on the phone talking with people about parks and a number of things, but I looked at the sheriff's budget and the actuals, and I don't see what 6.8 is going to fund because the actuals display something completely different. So, Gary, or maybe I ask finance staff, tell me, I'll direct it to you first, but I don't want to show up here tomorrow with this. So I'm asking for what is the responsible budget that you all worked on for all the departments, and if it's just one that's the anomaly here that went awry, then I want to see that corrected because I don't want to spend all day tomorrow with that on my shoulders. So how this happen?
Yes, there is not a policy or an ordinance that you will have a 30-year fixed budget for the courthouse. That was your direction to me to provide to you. This whole forecast, as you'll hear in a moment, when Sandra and Elizabeth presents, it's an estimate. No one can guarantee 30 years in the black, no one. We estimate and plan and make assumptions for that. There will be changes every year where things will make that out of whack. Yes, I asked every department to live within their means. Again, out of respect, an elected official felt that they needed more. I'm taking their word for it. We're also looking at the actuals and the numbers that are entered. You'll hear more about that later. But yes, if there are any faults or criticisms on me, because this is my proposed budget, I'm in a very difficult position as I have been every year for the 6 years I've been your administrator. I've done my best, and clearly that's not good enough, and I get that. So I'll work with you on what you'd like to do moving forward.
So if a quick follow, Chair, if I may, and that is, so Gary, what does the actual sheriff's budget look like that will be in alignment with the 30-year forecast, similar to a projection that we saw in February? What is that number, and how much more is that than the current year? How much increase in the proposal you all worked on, finance for the sheriff's office, what does that number look like as far as the increase from the fiscal year 24-25?
I'm going to ask for an assist, please, Elizabeth or Sandra.
Sorry, the question is how much did they receive over the allotted?
I'm sorry if it wasn't clear. So I guess I'm talking to a budget that I haven't seen. So if you were to put together, my understanding you had a staff proposed budget for the sheriff's office based on actuals. And so it's not in the packet, but if I had it in my hand, how much more is that? How much more is the one you worked on for 25-26 over the 24-25 budget?
Okay, Elizabeth Comfort, Finance Director. So the CCSO budget is at 11.5 increase in general fund. Our proposal was 4% for all departments for their general fund increase. So this is a 7.5% increase over the projected 4%.
So what does 4% equate to in dollars?
The 4 is the budget.
Let me back into that and I'll get you that number.
Okay. Because if we're gonna work all week, or whatever it may be, again, I'm just gonna I'll beat this horse as long as I have to. Sorry, colleagues, but, we can't be $250 million in the red. That's not the right trajectory.
Commissioner West?
So I have a question.
No, go.
Well, that increase, was that just on personnel or what?
Commission, budget members, your mic on, thank you.
Was that budget increase primarily personnel or was it, it's just personnel, right? Personnel costs?
That's in the.
Yeah,
That's in the budget. That's material and services as well as personnel and capital outlay.
but personnel is like 80% of the budget,
Correct.
right?
Commissioner West?
This budget committee, with the new exception of Chair Roberts, was very pointed and deliberative of what we wanted to see from the sheriff's office. We were all working hard together in collaboration to get there. I have sticker shock about how, and doubt whether we got there. This board is made up of longstanding law enforcement supporters. We have members on this board that are first-hand responders in the fire department, the sheriff's department. This is a priority. We've always made law enforcement a priority. I don't know, I would assume that also district attorney's office is also part of law enforcement. I would assume that's also part of our party. It's the second. I mean, it's not near as much as the sheriff's office, but it's also, but that department has seemed to always do a lot with an absolute little. There was just today about the district attorney keeping his own calendar, though we wish he maybe had some support, which we know DA Wentworth works very hard, and he has done a lot with a little, and never comes and gives us sticker shock. He just says, I want to be a team member and figure out how to do it and get this done for the county. I kind of have chills a little bit, like in a bad way, like guttural, visceral feelings around that red number of almost $250 million, $250 million. This seems so different than what we committed to last year. I know we gave very strong direction about what we needed to see and was a priority. I know that, like, the way this stands, I don't know if I can get to support your proposed budget, Administrator Schmidt. I know you worked hard on this. I'd like to maybe see something that was more in line with this committee was seeking to go and carry forward with last year when we rolled up our sleeves, and I think did some of the most transparent public work on a budget in the region and in the history of Clackamas County to deal with the realities that we face with the new courthouse and keeping our priorities. It does feel like that one department wants to have all the nice possible things on the Christmas tree while everyone else seems to go without, at the detriment of the fiscal responsibility and of the rest of the county and its future stability. I'm very concerned by that. I don't know, that's my comments, but it's quite concerning.
Commissioner Schrader?
Yeah, I just would like to add to that. This has been sticker shock for me too. I thought we were on a parallel path, and I've always been supportive of the sheriff's office. Craig, I've supported you for years. I support Angie, but we did do an audit. We did ask for certain things. I'm concerned, I'm hearing that the context of budgeting to actuals is not been a part of the consideration as we move forward with a public safety budget. That's of concern to me, and I think it would behoove us to look at a budget without the 6.8 million, Gary. I don't know if you have that available too, but to compare the two, I think that might be something we discuss. We've always funded, and when I look at that purple bar up there, wow, I mean, we really do fund public safety, but we also have to fund the district attorney and the courthouse, which is part of that nexus. And we had already planned, in order to afford this, it was, to make these payments for 30 years. And if this budget puts us in the black, or puts us, in the red, by year 11, that's not really good. That wasn't what our plan was. I know the plans are fungible and things change, but I think veering away from this right now would be a mistake for our fiscal, resiliency. So that's just my 2 cents. And we did do an audit, but Gary, did we ever get an audit report back from the sheriff? I mean, did we ever get a response from that, or have some of the things that we suggested as a group been implemented? Do we know?
I sent you all, including the public
Oh, I
members,
did,
a
yeah.
updated memo with the progress on the
Okay, I
Moss
need to
Adams
find-
performance audit a few months ago,
Okay,
I think.
I need to
And
find that.
I did another update just earlier this week, staff did. Everything is completed but 2 items on that performance audit. One is to determine the use of the levy dollars, which is entirely a board/political decision. That's not a staff discussion.
Okay,
And the final one is to do the timely reporting of financials, which is, it's so close. It's almost there, but it's still not entirely on
Okay,
time. But it's so much better, but it's still not entirely timely. Those are the only 2 remaining items. Everything else has been completed.
everything else has been done. And the issue I've heard over and over again is, again, budgeting to actuals. Could you give me some insight as to what you mean when you talk about budgeting to actuals and why that this doesn't seem to be happening in this particular domain?
Okay, Sandra Montoya again, Budget Manager. The difficulty that we've had over the last couple of years, and I've only been here 5 years, so that definitely in my time, is the data is relatively slow to get in the system. And so the only, accounting-wise, finance can only project based on the data that's in the system, so transactions that are posted in the system. If a department is slow to process transactions, we wouldn't know about those transactions. So we therefore can't project on those things. So that's the budget to actual, that's the difficulty with projecting. Cindy, you have something to add?
Thanks. I'm Cindy Decker, County Administration. Am I on?
No.
Okay. So we do look at actuals when the county, when finance does their projections. But the departments also do their projections. And sometimes we have very different projections. What we look at to do the analysis and what they may be looking at to do the analysis are different. Surely that's the case with the sheriff's office. And so when we don't have all the data in, we basically look at the actuals and then we try to project and apply certain formulas to say, if the spending was the same, this is what it would look like. And so the actuals, we do take them into account, but we don't base next year's budget on the actuals. It is part of the analysis.
But it's the analysis of, yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay, thank you.
Chair Roberts. Yes. I guess I have a couple questions for Gary, but just kind of I think a note might be to give the sheriff the opportunity to really come and address a lot of the questions. I think that's fair across the board. I hear some concern about that. I also recognize that she has a new financial person, Patrick, who worked in county finance, who has a really understanding of county finance. And Gary and I have met with him, and I will just say he is doing an incredible job trying to make sure that meeting the needs of finance and trying to kind of bring things together, Gary. So I would just kind of caution and say, hey, let's kind of hear from the sheriff. We'll pose those questions to her. And and let her respond to some of those. So I think one of the questions I had for you, Gary, and so today, if I heard you correctly, your reserve is about 22.2 million and contingency is about 21 million. Is that right?
General fund contingency, 23.8 million. General fund reserves, 22.2 million.
Okay, can you maybe help me out then on page 7? It talks about, and maybe that's what you're meaning, all of the outside of general fund contingencies, because it says contingency budget is 141 million. So is that what you're referring to then?
Thank you. That is the entire county, not just general fund, everything, including federal, state, dollars, all funding sources of the entire county. So yes, that's much higher. That includes non-general fund funds that are in contingency and reserves, yes.
Okay, I was just trying to sort that out because I saw the two different numbers and didn't understand that, so I would yield back.
All right, then, Ms. Rader.
So, I really would have to because I don't even know where to start, but since the budget is primarily personnel costs, and the swing of these PERS costs can slap a $10 million hit onto the bottom line of a budget before you even know it. I mean, I don't even know, as in my question, I don't even know how you budget for that. And the county's so underwater on their pension obligation, just treading water, as I mentioned. And in what I heard and just the agencies this morning and what I saw with the Parks Department, they're burdened by these costs. Mm-hmm. And they're burdened by the personnel costs. Now, I don't know what the law is, and I know these negotiations with labor are really tough, but there are a lot of counties, some of which I've worked with, that have had to grapple with this exact thing. And if you don't do it, it's similar to what you told the Parks Department. It will come home to roost. And that payment, that, as Moody's noted, of being, 2.5 times the median, is really high. And I don't, maybe it's taking a look at what happens when you hire new employees, and how do we really gauge that hit? I mean, I think, it can go anywhere from, a 5 to almost 20% increase in that current liability. So, I mean, it's like, I don't even have confidence in this being only 241 million myself. So, I know that's a lot to think about, but, there have been several cities and counties that have gone under and filed Chapter 11 for just that very topic, because they were paying the employee portion, and you just can't keep up with it.
Yeah.
So, again, I know this is all very complicated, but it's hard for me to even think about opining on a budget when it's all personnel, and we have this unknown factor that it really hits you hard. I've seen just on a line item before where where a sheriff's office or a police department will take just on the line item additional $10 million in 1 year, and it's just I don't know. So this is it's a big topic, and I know there are huge constraints, but I would really like to, in the future, understand that one thing, because I think it's a big red flag for the county. Mm-hmm. So.
Assuming, there are. Ms. Lee.
Yes, I was looking at what happens over the 19 years that we have a shortfall in regard to the 6.8 million, and that comes to about 120 million right there out of the 250 roughly. So I did hear this morning Commissioner Savas talk about the potential of maybe going out for a measure that would fund part of the sheriff's department, because people are very sympathetic about making sure that is funded. So I wonder if that might be a viable way to look at taking care of some of our deficit in the future.
So, thanks for that. So on the ELED, as I saw that they were asking, or I think it was about 680 million, something like that, was the general fund contribution to make the district whole, so.
1,000.
I'm sorry, 680,000.
Oh, okay.
I'm actually in the millions over here doing some other math, so sorry about that. So in essence, with probably if we did go to the voters, it probably might relieve the budget or the general fund maybe somewhere between 680 and $1 million. This is late. We asked for a little bit more to carry us through, so it's not a big jump. And I know that Sandra was going to help do the math and how what the actual increase would have been. I just took some baseline numbers here. If I look at the fiscal year 24-25 amended or projected year end and multiplied it times 1.04, I'm not finding 6.8 million. It's a little bit less, Gary. So I'm at a loss as to if I look at the general fund support line, if that's where the 6.8, I mean, I can see I can see definitely 80 million and 86 million. That's 6 million about right there, but not 6.8. So what is the multiplier, or what's the base that was multiplied times 11%?
All right, finance team.
Excuse me, the 6.8 million is a combination of this year and next year. Next year is about I have to get my exact figures, but that's a 2-year number.
So could you repeat that, please? I'm sorry.
6.8 million is 2 years. That's general fund subsidy for this current fiscal year, and then it's about I'll get you the exact number, 4 point something for next fiscal year, for 25-26.
So is the sheriff's office budget over? Is that what we're at? It's going to be, if I'm looking at the general fund support line, so it's 78 million roughly is the projected.
I'm sorry, where are you looking at, Commissioner?
Or the amended. I'm on tab 9, page 3.
Oh, you're in the book.
Under general fund support, which is about 5, 6, 7 lines down, where it says general fund support. And I'm toggling over to the fiscal year 24-25, which is now. And it says 78,216,704. That's the amended budget. So the projected year end says it's 80 million. So am I reading into that the sheriff's office budget is $2,200,000 over?
Yes, we are anticipating a supplemental budget from the sheriff's office for their general fund, because they have, they're projected to go over their current budget. And so when the total of 6.8 is for ELED, because this year they've also gone, did they, is it this year? Yes.
82,000 for this year.
In the current budget year and for next fiscal year, they're asking for additional general funds for ELED and for their general fund operating budget.
So I don't know where I saw it, and I wasn't ready for this. This comes as a little bit of a surprise. This whole thing was a surprise. So if the levy is not fully staffed, how did we go over?
We're not over in the levy, Commissioner. The overage is in the Fund 100 and the ELED.
So what's the overage associated with?
So it's a combination of personnel and materials and supplies.
Okay, so is the personnel sworn or unsworn?
We don't have that detail as to which positions those are. We'd have to come back and get that to you. So it's a combination of, so if you look at, for example, materials and supplies in Fund 100, you look at, again, this gets back to the analysis of what the actual expenditures year-to-date have been and what they're projecting expending. And so they're going to come back tomorrow and talk about what they are going to be asking for in a supplemental budget in Fund 100. They wanted to make that presentation directly to you tomorrow. And so what the 6.8 million that Gary was talking about, that includes ELED and Fund 100. And for fiscal year 24-25, that's $2.4 million, of which 2.3 of that is for Fund 100. And then for next year, we're looking at another 4.37 million, of which 3.7 of that is Fund 100.
Well, I just expected from our conversation last year that there was gonna be an overage or requirement for a supplemental budget would be for sworn officers. And I didn't see, at least what I saw was only an increase of 1 under the levy of FTE with still a gap to go. So I know that's not Fund 100, but I'm just trying to understand how we got there if the actuals, I guess I need a better explanation, because if the budget went over and yet we're still not hiring people for the levy or don't have that filled, that was contrary to this budget committee's direction and what we expected for a supplemental budget. I
Yes, I
expected to
think-
see fully staffed levy and then a supplemental budget if needed.
There's 54 vacancies as of last week, and I think 16 of those were in the levy. The ELED is fully staffed, and the rest of those are in Fund 100. So I think, as Chair Roberts said, it's probably good to have this conversation with the sheriff because they had a certain way of looking at their budget.
All right, I see no more questions. Could you move us to the next portion of the presentation, please?
Go ahead, Elizabeth, Sandra, and
That
Cindy.
would be me. Thank you. So good afternoon, Budget Committee. I'm Cindy Becker with County Administration, and I work very closely with Finance and County Administration on the budget. So this is just a quick overview, similar to what we did last year, budget highlights, a general fund distribution, and the forecast. I will start out with the first few slides and turn it over to Elizabeth to talk about the forecast. So one of the things that for those who get into local government is understanding the difference between General Fund 100 and General Fund support. So General Fund 100 is the actual fund, and those departments that are in that fund are primarily get property tax and other discretionary revenue. General Fund support is the subsidy that goes to the departments. So majority of these departments are in Fund 100, but almost every department gets some sort of subsidy, General Fund support subsidy. The only two departments that don't get that are Justice, the Justice Court, and Technology Services. And that general fund subsidy can go anywhere from $90,000 for CCOM up to $86.5 million for the Sheriff's Office, and it ranges everywhere between that. So again, there is the Fund 100, and then there is general fund subsidy that goes to each of, almost all of the departments and elected offices. So who receives general, next slide, sorry. So who receives general fund support? We broke this up into 4 different categories. There's nothing really magic about them, but they seem to fit. So public safety, again, we consider public safety to be more than the sheriff's office and the district attorney, but to also include juvenile, the courthouse, and 911, and disaster management. There are also elected officials that are not in public safety, the assessor, county clerk, and treasurer. Then we have the 2 major operating departments, Health, Housing, and Human Services, and Transportation and Development. And finally, the internal services departments, which is county admin, the board, county council, finance and facilities, human resources, and public and government affairs. All of these departments receive some amount of general fund subsidy. Next slide. This is shown earlier in Gary's message. What you see on the side here is the difference between what the proposed budget is over what they received last year. You see that both in the dollar amount and the percentage. And red obviously means that they're getting less this year, and black means that they're getting more. Any questions about this? On the next page, just shows you, again, if you look at those 4 groups that I talked about earlier, just as a group, what happened to them over the past year in terms of their budget, internal services, as a group, their budgets went down, public safety up, operating departments down 1%, and elected officials not in public service, they basically remain the same. So again, as Gary has talked about, you can see where a good portion of the county's general fund support goes is to public safety departments. Any questions before I turn over to the forecast? Yes, James.
James Rhodes. The public safety 5% increase, that includes the new $15 million courthouse payment that falls in the public safety category?
Yes.
Thank you.
Question?
And a follow-up with James's question. So that increase, because of the courthouse, is that, of that 5%, would that be the majority of that 5%? Because of the courthouse cost?
I think it's the courthouse and the sheriff, quite honestly. The sheriff's budget increased 11.5%.
Okay.
There's another, let's see, yeah, there's a couple of glitches, if you will, not glitches, but if you look at the big increase in the assessor's office and human resources, that's because of one-time investments in technology, so those are not ongoing increases.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions before we do the forecast? Okay.
I think move on.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Good afternoon again, Elizabeth Comfort, Finance Director. Our forecast is on the general fund, and that's Fund 100. As Cindy expressed, it's discretionary funds that come into this accounting fund, as well as our property taxes. So as you see here, we have various revenues that come in, and we have material and services as well as personnel, which Wendy pointed out is our largest expense out of this fund. And then going a little bit below, you'll see the courthouse. We have a transfer out of general fund dollars to Fund 420, which we'll talk about tomorrow, and that's where the payments are made. So the general fund houses these dollars and then transfers them out as needed. So it also transfers funds out to other departments as we subsidize or contribute to other departments' expenditures. And then at the bottom of the page, we have our contingency, our reserves, and then our unappropriated ending fund balance. Those $3 amounts, those always carry over to your beginning balance in the next year. So what goes into the forecast? So we have several assumptions on the next page. If you can either follow along with me, but I wanted to share that the forecast is a living document. So you'll even see that there might be some changes from the actual printed budget, because as we get new information, we want to add to that information to this document to make sure that it has the latest and greatest information, because you need to make decisions based on what is happening with our dollars, how it's coming in, how it's going out. We have approximately 18 different assumptions that we use in this. So think of it as levers. Some of them are pushing dollars out, some of them are bringing dollars in. So we anticipate what is the CPI going to be? What are the increases? Sometimes personnel changes. Again, PERS has its own different rate of increase. Every 2 years it increases significantly. We have personnel vacancies. We have COLA for the person, also for the staff. And so each of those, we make our best assumptions for the current year. And then the outgoing years, we make assumptions that we're stretching our imagination as we move out. And we have here at the county a 30-year forecast, which is very rare. Our policy says a 5-year stable budget, a stable and sustainable budget, which we do. We have a 5-year balanced budget. But each year you have to take on its own. So what we do is with this forecast, we take year one and we say, if we add to the expenses on a cost of living increase, what's our starting point? And so that's how the forecast is created. We don't know what's going to happen 15 years down the road, but we know where we're starting. And so each of these assumptions are very critical. and they fluctuate. They can be very sensitive. You know, we had COVID show up, right? And then we had 2 years later, we had material and services costs of increase of 29%. So it's very sensitive to each of these changes. So some of the assumptions, I'm not going to go through this list in particular, every single one, but as you see, you know, when you add staff, that's an ongoing expense. So we have ongoing expenses with personnel, with the cost of living, and those salaries that increase over the year. But then we have one-time expenditures. So we've just put in a library, Gladstone and Oak Lodge. And so those are one-time dollars that went to fund those constructions. Then we have transfers now to ELED. So is that going to continue? Right now, we don't know how that will continue. It's budgeted right now of $676,000, but could it be more in the following year? So we make these estimates of what we know today. Will we be able to find other revenue for the LED so then to back off of using general fund? Those are questions and programs we need to look at. Good news is we have 2 debts that are going to be paid off in the next 4 years, I think 3 to 4 years. We have our 2012 series is going to be paid off. We're going to pay that off in a lump sum, saving us about $825,000 in interest. So that's the good news that we're going to have just in a couple of years. And then we also have our balloon payment for our 2020 series, which is the Portland-Milwaukee Light Rail project. So then those dollars will stop. So we've accounted for the general fund no longer going to that debt, but now that general fund is now being included and absorbed in new revenue that we can use for future. So I just want to caution you, just because the debt's paid off, now we have these dollars available. We've already accounted for those dollars, and that's part of the sustainability. We allocate and we utilize every available dollar that we perceive that's coming. We also talk about the general fund support. That has an increase to the departments. There's general fund support, and then there are the cost allocations. I think we'll talk more about cost allocations at another time. But right now, the internal services that you saw, they're about 50% covered with cost allocations to the various departments they serve, and 50% they are supported by general fund. So as those costs for those services and those central service departments increase, also those dollars need to be increased as well. And then just to touch on our capital projects reserve, we made a commitment several years ago to build our reserves for our assets in the county. So for those projects, we need to replace big, expensive units and repairs to buildings. So we're committed to transferring dollars to those capital projects. And that's also in a separate fund. It's called 420, and that's where our courthouse payments are made out of as well. So those are the highlights I think I would bring. Any questions on the assumptions, or one that you're not seeing here that you're curious about?
I have a quick question. So the only item in the assumptions as far as large projects is that $1.5 million a year set aside, is that correct?
It's, excuse me, we're contributing $1.5 million to the reserves, but we also transfer funds for current year projects as well. Right. So we have approximately $2 million, well, just under $2 million for county assets in general, and then we've committed to at least $2 million a year for CCSO capital assets. So there are more dollars going to capital projects in general, but those are that $1.5 million is for reserves.
Right, but there's anything that's not currently contracted to build or large project isn't in the assumptions at all, say a new jail or something.
Correct. If we don't have something that's real, to talk about, it won't go in here. Correct. So like the courthouse, when we were talking about the courthouse 4 years ago, actually 5 years ago, that's when Sandra joined our team, we said we need to build the courthouse future payments in there because the board has said we're going to do a courthouse, so let's get it in.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Comment. I just wanted to share that during one of our audit committee meetings, we had our auditor, and I asked the auditor a question, and it was premised on what we all talked about in February, and that was having a 30-year budget that put us again in that lower right column in the black. I think it was 3 million, but I don't care what the number is, I just want it to be in the black, not the red. And I asked about, is there a means of auditing the forecast to make sure that all those variables and assumptions are accurate and are being updated so that it's valid, right? It's not a pie in the sky. And I know that you get 30 years out there, it's foggy, but there again, year one's gonna be super accurate, year two will be less accurate, you know, on and on and on. That's a reasonable assumption. But I'm hoping that, you know, the board or this budget committee would support a 30-year forecast that keeps us in the black, and having an auditor look at that every year and embed that in policy or ordinance or something. But I'm not gonna be able to deal with a budget tomorrow that puts us in the red by 250 million on that 30-year trajectory. So I just ask that, Gary, I just want to look at you. I just want to come show up here tomorrow with a budget that is built on the premise that we've been working on for over a year. Not one that puts us $250 million backwards. And so I'm in an untenable position. I'm sure if anyone agrees with me around here, we're all in an untenable position. That's a bad place to put us all.
And that's why Thursday you have unlimited time to deliberate and direct me how you want to make changes. That's what this process is about.
Well, I'll say one more thing and I'm done. And that is that I want to show up here tomorrow with an alternative budget that reflects the trend and the direction this budget committee made over a year ago. I don't want to do it Thursday. I don't mind having them two side by side, but I don't want to show up here tomorrow. That's a bad basis to start. I yield back.
Commissioner West.
I agree with Commissioner Savas. It seems like for whatever reason, something caused us to widely divert from the very strong public stated goals of this budget committee and the hard work that we did for the good of the entire county. I won't be supporting whatever was just presented before me today. Like morally, I cannot. And we can hear whatever presentation we want. The money's not in the bank. It's not happening. From my point, I won't speak for the board. For me, I'm still literally just shocked. Sticker shock is still. This is like so opposite of what I thought we'd maybe see this year. I felt like we made so much progress last year collaboratively between public citizen members and the entire Board of County Commissioners. A lot of work, and I don't know how we got here a year later. It seems like something is directing us in a vastly different direction than has been the overall goal. And I can't get there. So I agree with, I know that, I don't know if it's possible, but I'd like to see something that's reasonably closer to what this board has always supported, or this committee, so that I could work from a reasonable starting point. This isn't reasonable. So I want to back my colleague and say, I would also like to see something like that.
Commissioner Helm.
I don't have a question so much as just a comment, and forgive me, I may be ignorant and I may be naive because I'm just coming into this, but just initial perspective, because I tried to digest this over the weekend, so I haven't had it as long as some of you, and I'm trying to learn still. But first of all, that graph is very telling. I think we do fund the sheriff's office well. I also believe in living within your means, and with any business, you have to tighten your belt somehow, some way, and it looks like all the departments have been asked to go up a certain point, and not all of them did, and some asked for more than others. So just my initial thought on this is, when I threw my name in the hat for this position, you know, the county's in a good place, right? And I'm very proud of the board and staff and the budget committee for getting us in the black and keeping us in the black. And I'm very fiscally conservative. I do believe in living within your means. And if everyone's been asked to cut, then everyone needs to find a way to do it. It's the right thing to do for our taxpayers. So that's all I have to say.
I assume it's too late to change the presentation for tomorrow, but would it be possible to maybe get like a different, what the variance is?
So the proposed budget is the proposed budget. It's not changed at this point, but you direct me what you want to see. I've heard from two of you. You want to see an option 2 for the sheriff's budget, which I can bring tomorrow. We did that 2 years ago, remember? We had 2 options, versions of that department's budget. I'll bring you what my team's suggestions were. We'll have that printed for you tomorrow. But again, the proposed budget is proposed budget. I love you all. I love you all. I did my job. This is a balanced budget, and it is stable and structurally sound for 11 years. So please don't dismiss that. Yes, there's an issue for 30 years. Let's work on it together, please. That's why we're here for 2 more days. So please don't give up yet. Let's work together on the path forward. Thank you.
Gary, can you bring back just what you said? A budget, if it's all in the sheriff's office, then it is, but a budget that puts this in the black, that was on the trajectory that we had, that we saw in February.
Yes, I will have that for you tomorrow morning, yes.
Okay.
With the team, help from the budget team.
Yes.
Thank you, Gary. Any other questions before we move on?
Well, one more thing, sorry I'm taking up so much mic time, I'm sorry. But if there were, and again, I'm just looking at that one page there that I spoke to earlier, if there is an overage in the sheriff's office, extra expenditures, then I need to understand what it was. Was our budget too small last year? And that's why it's over the projected amount. I mean, I need honest answers. I don't care which way, however it looks, but I need to better understand what the overages are assigned to. As opposed to asking the sheriff. I mean, I'll ask the sheriff, but I want to better understand where to find all of that.
Did they use their,
I don't know where my thing is. So we've had several conversations with the sheriff's office. The sheriff has said in these meetings that the numbers, her budget reflects what she thought she needed, what she thought the sheriff's office needed, which may or may not have been what the budget that was approved.
Well, I know there's thousands of transactions, but if there was an overage, apparently there is, I need to know what it was, what was it attributed to?
Well, we can go line by line in materials and services. We can say, well, here's what the budget was, and here's what they anticipated, what they're projecting the expenditures are. And you can see the differences right there. And then in personnel, again, Gary talked about the additional positions for the courthouse. There were 13 positions funded in next year's budget, and they were funded for 6 months in this year's budget, and then for a full year going forward. Those additional 13 positions, that's above and beyond what was talked about last year. And then there were, if you look at such things as overtime and some other areas, you can see, we can show you what the budget was and what the projections are, and you can see for yourself.
That would be good. We could get that.
Ms. Rader?
so did they use the contingency that they had? I mean, they're still showing 3 million and
They still have contingency in their levy.
in the levy, in
Yes.
their operating.
Yes.
They have 3 funds, so they operate out of the general fund, the ELED fund, which is 216, and the levy fund. So what we're speaking to is the general fund.
It's just the general fund, okay.
In 100, Fund 100.
Any more questions, Wendy? Chair Roberts?
Yeah, I guess I want to reiterate the same thing I said earlier, and that is I actually have some answers to some of the questions, but I feel it should be answered by the sheriff and their finance person. Number one, I don't want to get anything wrong, and they're the ones that work with the numbers throughout the entire year. So I would just caution everybody that approach this with an open mind. Gary and I are working to really rebuild the relationship with the sheriffs and county finance. We're working hard. I just think it's an opportunity to let the sheriff come, present our budget. We all respectfully ask the questions, and we want to have a balanced budget. And I can just say there are a lot of factors that go into running the sheriff's office budget. So with that just being said, I'll yield back.
And no more questions. I believe we're moving on to the elected officials' compensation. Is that right?
Yes.
Let's do that.
HR team, please come forward. And please introduce yourselves and go ahead.
Good afternoon. Nina Monroe Smith, and I am the Interim Classification and Compensation Manager and presenting to you today. Joining me is Elisa Grandy, who was the Chair of the Compensation Board this year. We are here today to present the Compensation Board for elected officials' recommendations for fiscal year 2025-26. In this presentation, we will provide an overview of the Compensation Board's role in all of this, the process followed this year, and the recommendations that resulted from that work. The Compensation Board is composed of community members who reside in Clackamas County and have professional experience in human resources, specifically personnel and compensation management. This year's Compensation Board members are Elisa Grandy, who served as our chair, and she completed her second term on the Compensation Board, which is a total of 8 years. Kevin Agliar completed his time on the Compensation Board after 2 years of service, and Amy Smith finished her 3rd year. The board was supported by Clackamas County Human Resources staff. I served as the staff liaison as the interim classification and compensation manager, and although it was my first year as staff liaison, I have supported the Compensation Board for the past 11 years. Additional support was provided by Erin Brayman and Danielle Mache in Human Resources. I would also like to recognize Heather Pedersen, who is our current Deputy Director of Human Resources, who previously served as the staff liaison for a number of years and is here today with Evelyn Miner-Lawrence, the Human Resources Director. They're here to provide us support. The Compensation Board for elected officials process is required by the Oregon Revised Statute, ORS 204.112. This statute outlines the annual process for county compensation boards and grants these boards the authority to review the compensation of elected officials and make recommendations to the county's budget committee. The ORS itself provides general guidelines and considerations for how the compensation board is to determine their recommendations. This includes a review of comparable positions within the labor market, as well as internal alignment with individuals managed by those elected officials, and with other appointed employees serving in positions with similar management responsibility. All of these factors were reviewed and considered by the Compensation Board this year. The statute provides specific direction regarding the sheriff's position, stating that the sheriff's salary shall be fixed at an amount not less than that of any member of the sheriff's department. It is the Compensation Board's responsibility to submit its recommendations to the County Budget Committee for review and approval. That is why we are here today. As in previous years, the Compensation Board used a structured and consistent process to develop their recommendations. Key considerations include any cost of living adjustment or COLA in the proposed budget for represented and non-represented staff, salary compression between elected officials and their second in command, as well as market comparisons. The review of the labor market includes reviewing collected salary data from similar cities and counties, and then adjusting that data to account for things like PERS contribution, deferred compensation, car allowances, or other benefits that may vary by jurisdiction. The labor market used for comparison includes the following jurisdictions: Clark, Deschutes, Lane, Marion, Multnomah, and Washington counties, cities of Portland and Vancouver, and Metro. Comparable roles within those jurisdictions were used to assess pay alignment. In addition to the external market review, the board added an additional review as part of the third prong they use, reviewing internal pay levels within Clackamas County. This focused on elected officials who also serve as a head of a department and comparing their adjusted base pay rate, which includes deferred compensation, to that of appointed department directors. The Compensation Board then applies its methodology in the following sequence to formulate the recommendations you will hear. First, the cost of living adjustment. This is based on the Consumer Price Index and what's in the proposed budget for the non-represented and represented staff. Compression adjustments is applied when there is less than a 10% pay difference between the elected official and their second in command to help avoid salary compression. The Compensation Board also considered labor market and internal alignment for positions with comparable management responsibility. Elisa will be sharing those recommendations, but I do want to make a special note. Similar to last year, a 1% increase to the chair's add to pay from 2% to 3% is being recommended as part of this labor market review, where we reviewed the compensation and the additional add to pay for other chairs at other jurisdictions. For the last prong, where you'll see that the labor market, adjustments were recommended when the elected officials' adjusted base pay rate, again with their deferred compensation, was more than 1% below the market average, and/or the adjusted base pay rate for department elected officials fell below the minimum of salary range non-rep 38, which is one of the salary grades used for department directors at Clackamas County. Next, Elisa will walk you through the Compensation Board's recommendations for fiscal year 25-26.
Thank you to, try that again. Thank you to the Budget Committee for reviewing the Compensation Board's recommendations. This is my 8th year as a member of this board, and it comes at a pivotal time for our county and its citizens. This is a critical time in our country, and for so many reasons, our population is turning more and more to its local government for guidance, direction, support, and its legacy. Not only are the people of Clackamas County relying on their elected officials to a greater extent than perhaps ever before, those officials are also being tasked with more than they have in the past. We sit at a crossroads, and this board has chosen to support its elected officials with recommendations that align with our philosophy and also position the county for success in current and future recruitment for the strongest candidates to fill elected positions. Of particular note is that our esteemed Justice of the Peace will be retiring at the end of this year. The interim gubernatorial appointment will be restricted by specific geographic position requirements, so compensation will be of significant concern. You'll see one small adjustment to the philosophy and recommendations we've made in the past. As Nina mentioned, recognizing that the elected officials can utilize as comparators NRP 38 as significant department heads. As you likely may know, each year we invite elected officials to join in the Compensation Board review process. For the last several years, recommendations have come from them to expand our definition somewhat of our market comparators. which in some cases is only 2 other counties or cities, and to include other county department heads. As we reviewed the limited number of county comparators and evaluated both scope and responsibilities, we found that including Clackamas County department heads gave us a greater pool of like positions, allowing us to compare more apples to apples. And this year, we expanded our definition of market to include both external and internal, using NRP 38 as our baseline. Thank you for your attention this afternoon, and now we're going to talk about the recommendations. Firstly, for county assessor, of the 3 prongs, only the cost of living increase applies. For our county clerk, after providing a cost of living increase, we recommend a 4.9% increase based on market, and then an increase of 6.3% to the minimum pay of NRP 38. For our county commissioners, we are recommending that 2.8 cost of living increase. And once again, we are recommending an increase add to pay from 2% to 3% for our chair. The district attorney, we recommend the cost of living increase. And for the justice of the peace, the cost of living increase, an increase of 1.7% based on external market, and an increase of 4.6% to a minimum of that NRP 38. For our sheriff, a 2.8% cost of living, and then an increase of 2% based on compression to maintain that 10% standard. And finally, for our county treasurer, a 2.8% COLA. The total fiscal impact is, of the recommendations, is $78,901, and that is 0.019% of the personnel services budget. And we are happy to answer questions that you have regarding our methodology and our recommendations.
Hello, Gary.
Hi. Thank you to the Compensation Board for your incredible work you do every year. It is greatly, greatly appreciated. I give you my recommendation every year. With respect to the committee, I'm going to do that again. That is cost of living increase. It is accurate to say every county employee now, which is true because the union contracts have been resolved, every county employee will receive a 2.8% cost of living increase. You, as elected officials, should receive the same. So I do fully support that. You should receive what every other employee receives. I have consistently said, with great respect to our elected officials, an elected official is not a department director for 2 reasons. They are not responsible or accountable to the Board of Commissioners or to me. They're not. They do run an office, and they're called offices, not departments. They run an office, yes, with many, many moving parts, which are very large. They're also, all their employees are county employees, but those elected officials are not accountable. So their responsibility and accountability is different than an appointed department director. And the 10% spread, of course, an elected official should be paid higher than their number 2, but 10% seems extreme to me. And certainly you're not paid commissioners higher than I am, because your salary would be blown out of proportion. Again, that's a different scenario, I understand. So out of respect, that is my opinion only for you to consider as you make your decisions. Thank you.
All right, who wants to go first? Commissioner Slavis.
Yeah, well, some of you have been on the committee with me for a while, so you know that I've really always had a hard time trying to deal with this, and I want to thank you and the compensation, all of you, for the hard work you do. So sincerely mean that, and it's important work. But many, many years ago, being my analytical head, years ago, I realized that if we keep on doing what we're doing, then wages, whether it's for elected or whether it's for staff, but these comparators, it just spirals upward and upwards, and it runs away with itself. I would say that I have a little bit similar to Gary about that 10% differential. I'm concerned about that. I am concerned about that the governance structure of this County, the elected chair per se is different that of Multnomah County, is different than that of other counties and so on. So it's not really an apples for apples. And I'd probably also say that some of the comparators are counties that are in the red, which is perhaps, if that's been their approach to do things that they do, that might be one factor that brought them into the red. So I would rather have a reputation for being a lean, mean county and running a strict budget and not so much trying to, increase our pay. It's hard for me to carry that or not to carry, but to make that assessment for other elected officials, other than we've got to work within our budgets, because at the end of the day, the money comes from our budgets. And just knowing, as in his budget message, how desperately they needed some of those funds that you listed on that table, it seems to me, I will say this, I'm willing to keep my pay down to benefit the community at large. And so I've said that year after year after year, haven't been totally successful with that, but that's where I stop. I yield back, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Schrader.
I'll be honest, direct, and straightforward. I agree with Gary's assessment, so I'm willing to go in that direction. For me, as I said, as an elected official, we're not department heads, we're elected, and that to me is fundamentally different than being a department head, so I certainly don't agree with that part of it. I'm okay with fair and just compensation as an elected official with my other colleagues, and as I said, I think that we've always made sure that our employees, that their COLAs are coming forward for them too because of cost of living increases. That's why they call it a COLA, I guess. So I concur with what our administrator has set forward, and I just need to know if the rest of us can get there or not.
Commissioner West.
It is always weird to publicly talk about your salary.
Oh, I know, it's.
There's five of us here that get to do that.
This is the most bizarre part of
so
the
crazy.
entire, fundamentally.
Yeah, you're always said, don't ask how much people make. Well, you can just easily Google any five of ours and there it is. I totally also support what the administrator, we just got done being very concerned about some long forecasting budget options here before us that are concerning, and I concur with my colleague commissioners Savas and Schrader and what you brought forward. And I don't want to see us go much different than what we did last year.
Yeah.
I was really proud of the work we did last year, and I wish I should have asked this before we got to this point. Could you please explain to me what a minimum of NRP 38 is? Because I probably should know that, but I don't. Just hoping I may not be the only one watching this knowing what that line item is.
Absolutely. That is a salary grade that is assigned to some of our department directors that has a minimum and then a maximum of that grade. So this is reflective of getting to that minimum of a salary grade 38.
Okay. And it sounds like the biggest change is that we may have a new justice of the peace, right? Can you guys talk a little bit about that? Is a little different from last year, and can you explain a little bit how you guys got to there and your thoughts around the need to have that increase specifically? It's a little different than what we talked about last year.
So it is not outside of any of the recommendations we made. It is perhaps more important from a recruiting standpoint, because there are specific job requirements for recruitment for the Justice of the Peace, which require residency in the county. Please correct me if I'm incorrect. And so the pool of potential applicants, once so there's going to be an appointment to take her through what would be the rest of the term. And then for the next election, we would need new candidates to qualify for justice of the peace.
Okay.
And that is limited then to Clackamas County.
Okay.
That's not someone who we can recruit from outside of Clackamas County. It's not someone who can move from somewhere else.
Okay.
They have to, is it a 1 year or 2 year residency requirement? There's a longer term residency requirement before someone can qualify for that position. So it's important that that be at least an attractive salary, if not a competitive salary.
Okay. Gary, your recommendation that you're making on how to handle our compensation, is that already budgeted for within, with how we're looking at this, or are we going to see any changes in numbers?
Well, I thank you for asking. So the COLA has already been budgeted for these elected officials off the top, so if you reject it, we'll just take it out. All of the other changes have not been budgeted, and my proposal will be, if you do approve those changes, it comes from that department's existing budget. There's no additional funds. They'll have to cut elsewhere to accommodate the changes in the salaries, would be my suggestion.
Okay, I appreciate that. And you've already reviewed and looked at this before you made.
I have, yes.
Okay. Thank you for answering my questions, and thank you so much for your really difficult and great presentation and work that you guys do. Really appreciate it. As someone who receives a salary as an elected, I'm going to join my colleagues and go with the administrator's recommendation. That's how I'll be voting.
Well, I guess I'll offer up a quick opinion. I very much appreciate the information and the recommendations, and I'm happy to take them as suggestions and not feel married to them. I think COLA makes sense. I'd be open to a discussion on how much, but I don't really care too much. The other two, I wouldn't be particularly interested in adopting at this time, myself. Anybody else have questions or comments? Or a motion?
I move that this committee accept all of the recommendations as presented by the Compensation Committee as outlined in their packet, to include the assessor, clerk, commissioner, board chair, district attorney, justice of the peace, sheriff, and treasurer.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any further debate? All right. Yeah?
So for clarification, your motion is significantly different than Administrator Schmidt's recommendation. Okay.
Again, just to restate it, my motion is to accept all of the
Okay.
total recommended increases as posted by the committee.
Okay.
Okay. Let's call the question.
Ms. Lee,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Ms. Rader,
Aye.
Commissioner Helm,
No. Sorry, no, I don't feel good voting on this. This is my first day, so.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Helm, just to clarify, are you abstaining or voting no?
I'm sorry, I'm a no.
Thank you. Commissioner Savas,
No.
Mr. Karn,
No.
Commissioner West,
No.
Mr. Rhodes,
Yes. Aye.
Chair Roberts,
Yes.
Chair Cernak.
No.
Motion fails 5-5, Mr. Chair.
All right.
Do it again.
Commissioner West.
Thank you, Chair. I move that we support the recommendations from Administrator Schmidt on compensation for board elected officials.
Which is the COLA only at 2.
Yeah, which is the COLA only at 2.8%.
That's why.
Am I allowed to second? Yes. I will second. Any debate? Clerk, please call the poll.
Ms. Lee,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Ms. Rader,
Aye.
Commissioner Helm,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
No.
Mr. Carr,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
No.
Mr. Rhodes,
Aye.
Chair Roberts,
Aye.
Chair Cernak.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-2, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you. All right. So, motion passes. Seeing no further questions, we're adjourned until 8 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Thank you all very much. So we start at 8 a.m. sharp tomorrow.
And all
8
this-
a.m. we start. If you could please come a little bit earlier. Thank you. Chair Cernak.
Cheers.
Question.
Sorry, yes?
Before we adjourn, Mr. Savas.
Okay, before we,
And I had.
So, Gary, I just have a procedural question as far as going over detail. The Budget Committee made some recommendations and voted last year, one of them being the audit, I believe, and what were all, can you remember all the actions that the board, the Budget Committee, not the board, but the Budget Committee acted on last year? And when will we get that follow-up in detail?
I have it right in front of me. I can hand it to you before you walk out of the room.
Okay. So, as far as discussing that, when can we discuss it?
Well, you could do it right now, or tomorrow's pretty tightly packed, but we can do it probably Thursday. So I'd say either now or Thursday.
Okay, I would like to discuss that, to see where we are, and if we have not accomplished it or do not have a glide path towards accomplishing it, I guess we need to figure out how we're gonna cope with it, right? And, so if there's a commitment, I can wait till Thursday for that. So colleagues, just wanna make sure you all wanna have that discussion, okay? And, lastly, when we have that discussion, I also want to talk about your support, or maybe the Budget Committee support for having the county have an annual audit of the 30-year forecast and set that in policy or ordinance, however that may be. So, as mentioned earlier, so, thank you. Yield back.
all right. Anything else before I adjourn? Adjourned until 8 a.m. tomorrow.